Heavenly Father, thank you for this time of year where we can prepare for the students that are coming into our schools in the fall, when we have time to collaborate and strategize and just get ready for a school year that will bring success and reward for everybody who participates. I pray, God, as we begin this meeting, Father, that our heart's intent would be to first and above all things glorify you, and then secondly, to faithfully conduct the service that you've called us to for the betterment of the students that we serve, the families that we serve, and the employees that we are responsible for. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job.
Right. The school board meeting workshop for June 17th, 2024 will now come to order. And the first item on our agenda is to review the agenda for next week's meeting.
Yes, ma'am. So traditionally this meeting is quicker than most because you have one board meeting at the beginning of June, then you have a second at the end of June to account for the July 4th week. So I think we can get through our work here in short order. I do have some people that I want to introduce. Kelly, if you can come forward. You know, Laura's retiring. This is Laura's replacement, Kelly Guilfoyle. Kelly, wave, say hi, everybody. Forward to it. Fresh on the job, day one today. Yay! Day one. Since her first order of business is she's here with you guys. We also have Lance Addison, that you know assuming a new role as the Director of Facilities and Planning. I think that's it for new people here today. So to start with the agenda, you know, this is the time that we celebrate our retirees. We have 113 retirees. That's a total of 2,271 years in Clay County schools. So traditionally we use this meeting to honor our retirees. There's a 13-minute video that honors all of those folks during that time frame, because traditionally there's less of the student celebration piece, so it's strategic that the video, of course, is 13 minutes, but 13 minutes versus 2,271 years, I think our return on investment is pretty good in that case, okay? And then we have a short presentation on the fine arts after that. And then as we go into the discussion agenda, currently there are no special actions or no discussion agenda items at this point. When you go into the consent agenda, we have the minutes. I didn't see any challenges there. Payment of the FADS equivalent. Then our personnel consent agenda, pretty standard stuff. And then you have dual enrollment agreement with Emery-Riddle, who you know is at Fleming Island, Keystone, Middleburg, Oakleaf, and Orange Park. All those students can take dual enrollment courses through Emery-Riddle. It's a great program. Total cost is approximately $40,000. Next is our agreement with AMI Kids. You know, they serve up to 44 male students, mostly with some difficulties in their lives. It's a great program.
Is there, excuse me, is there any way that we can increase that program?
I think it's their capacity to handle that is the challenge.
So we need to ask.
So yeah, I can certainly contact Maria and see if there's any way that she's interested in expanding that.
There's no way to clone or anything like that.
It's yeah, we have a very positive relationship with them. They do a great job. You know, DJJ has their own set of accountability. We have a grading system of A, B, C, D, F for schools. They have their own grading system for DJJ programs like PACE and AMI Kids, but they do awesome. Next is letters, language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. You know, this is the professional development course that teachers take in order to become certified in or endorsed in reading. It's a fantastic, well-established program that we've talked about a few times here at the board workshop. Next is our CERP. which is our comprehensive evidence-based reading plan. You know that this is, every year at this time, the plan is rewritten, it's adjusted and brought forward to be in compliance with state statute. Remember, it goes over all of the areas of evidence-based reading. The end of it shows you all of the charts related to Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 strategies related to those 6 components of reading to have an evidence-based plan. Okay, next is the contract for physical therapy for the athletic trainers within all of our secondary schools.
I noticed that previously that was something that St. Vincent's covered, that we checked with other Baptists.
So we checked with other people to provide that. We had a very unique relationship with them that nobody else had. We also took a look at how other districts do this. Other districts hire a person individually to do that. So we believe that this is saving us about $15,000 per school in comparison to other districts. For example, Collier, which is similar in size, their cost is $655 versus ours. In St. John's, their cost is $553. So we believe that through our partnership with Preferred, they're picking up the other portion of the cost. So this is actually a cost-saving venture, if you want to look at it that way, compared to other districts. Duval hires individual people in order to do that work. So this is an example of how the district has used a creative processes in order to save the district money for a necessary safety component for our students. Okay, next is the charter renewal for Florida Cyber Charter Academy, which you know that under the statute, we believe that they meet the requirements to be renewed. It's a 5-year renewal. Next is the contract with Lexia. If you recall, we did a presentation a couple months ago related to Lexia, and Lexia is used within our schools in order to supplement reading instruction, provide a path for students to follow and improve their reading. And last year we were 12th in the state in ELA, which I think that's many components. Of course, it's the great work of teachers on the ground floor, but you also have to have supplemental programs in order to do that. So under MTSS, kind of diagnosing which area of the reading process the student's deficient in, and then providing instruction in that area so that the instruction is targeted, makes a lot of sense, and Lexia helps us do that. At the secondary level, it provides more systematic and direct instruction in our intensive reading classes. So that's Lexia. Next is PENDA, which does a similar thing for science, but science is unique in that it's assessed in 5, 8, and 10, 5th grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade. So when you take the 5th grade assessment, you're being tested on standards for a couple of years, some of which you haven't covered previously. So there's a whole component to PENDA, and while PENDA is a necessary portion of what we do, and I think it takes a lot, not only great teachers in the classroom, but also the curriculum that's provided, supplemental pieces to it, the coaching that's provided. So overall, we were 4th in the state of Florida in science, and PENDA's a piece of that success.
Mr. Brodsky,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to cite my concerns with PENDA again.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I need to pull this or, when I was in elementary school teaching, it was a fact that some 3rd and 4th grade teachers used only PENDA, which is an online platform, during small group, that actual physical hands-on science, which is a high-order critical thinking process, was not happening, and is not happening in all classrooms. And I know that it's not happening in all classrooms. However, my biggest concern with PENDA is not actually the program itself. The topics are interesting. My biggest concern is the fact that many teachers use it for, let's say, homework. It is not accessible as homework for our ESE population. Grades should not be given if we don't have direct support for our level 1s and 2s while completing PENDA. I have sat down with my own granddaughter to do PENDA, and it is very high order and very difficult. So when you put level 1s and 2s who cannot read on what we call technical text, so all kids struggle in technical text. It's probably the highest area of struggle across the nation, and that's text like the Constitution. PENDA is a technical text. There's lots of diagrams and pictures and large vocabulary words. I am going to suggest, and I would honestly think that the district would think this is a good idea, that our level 1s and 2s should not be using PENDA without help as homework. There has to be some kind of a system for that. And I do know kids who are level 1 ESE kids who have received very bad grades on PENDA as a homework grade. Kids they struggle with that. And I don't know what your thought is, Mr. Brodsky, on that, but if we're going to keep PENDA, which has great content and helps kids, I believe we need to have some instruction, one-on-one instruction for our kids, direct instruction, prior to giving PENDA as an assignment to be done alone.
Okay, my reaction to that is that perhaps increased training related to how to use the program properly would be appropriate based on your comments there. And so we could certainly do that. I think I'd also make the argument that virtually every program, every single program that we have, does every single person use every single program on every single day the way it's supposed to? The answer is no. I mean, it would be, I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of say that. And so with that in mind, certainly increasing the training related to that and the grading portion of that. I know that grading is a topic that is going to happen here.
Yeah, do you have documentation as to the type of instruction for the parameters of use of PENDA? I mean, I have not seen it when it first came out. I actually used PENDA.
Right.
And never saw anything about how to use PENDA or the limitations of PENDA. When it should be used, when it shouldn't be used, you know, I don't know what the district has done.
So certainly ensure that those things are occurring within the class and well.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the next agenda item, the purchase of the ELD supplemental curriculum from Vista Higher Learning. Next, we have the CTE overnight out-of-state travel. You know that our CTE programs are wonderful in our district, and they actually tell you a year ahead of time when they're going to various competitions. And then we have our K-12 out-of-state overnight travel. Next is the insurance renewal from Arthur Gallagher. I know that Dr. Gutko sent an email to everybody, and some folks had called her related to it. Perhaps the best chart is on the second to last page of it, and it's actually a cost savings in insurance, which is column 3 on the second to last page related to it. And I've always said it's always amazing that insurance doesn't go up every year, so there's a cost savings related to insurance. Next, we have proposed allocation changes for 24-25, and you can see the movement of cafeteria assistants and secretarial positions, etc. on that page. Next is the Power School contract renewals. These are the programs that we use for HR, for job postings, etc. It's how we manage all of our applicants. It also is our professional development system, as well as our ERP, which is our district's financial management, security, and transparency program through Power School. Next is the monthly reports, followed by the budget amendments, and Doc apologizes. She's actually at a CFO meeting. That's why she's not here today. deletion of certain items. And here's the bid renewal for milk products is the next item, followed by the bid renewal for small-scale construction, and you can see the companies that were awarded those contracts below $300,000. Next is our SREF fire safety report. You know, this is kind of interesting because maybe the board didn't realize this happens. There's an inspection of every school site that we have that happens, and often there are things that need to either be fixed, replaced, redone, etc. during the course of the year, and then there's a process by which all of those things are done, and it could be anything from the way that the emergency lighting works in a particular building to how the door operates to all kinds of stuff, and you can read all of those things. So each one of our facilities goes through that inspection every year, and then those things that are noted are fixed or remedied, whatever that is related to that. Similarly, the next item is our health inspection report, same sort of process, where they go ahead and they note a certain area that needs to be improved or redone, and those things are then done during that particular time frame. Next, we have the outdoor warning system. This is a system that allows you to measure the heat stress on athletes as well as lightning and weather conditions that are out there. Most districts have gone to this, where if lightning occurs in the area, it sends an alarm off, which would then tell you to get the students off the field. If the athlete's off the field, it measures the amount of time between lightning strikes. It's a safety process that we're implementing.
Does it do weather in general as far as?
It does.
Storms?
It does. So you can monitor it more.
Comprehensible.
Yeah, so you can monitor it more closely and more localized, because sometimes one of the challenges is what's happening in Keystone isn't happening in Oakland, right? So how do you kind of measure that? So
Because it would be great if there was a way to notify bus drivers too. Because
yeah,
there's a miss between the bus about to leave and then being out on the road when the weather is
when it
good.
happens.
So,
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that God has put an umbrella over where I live, and we've not had rain in 2 months. But I have driven through rain in many other places, and the Black Creek is filled back up, so I know someone's getting rain. You can never tell with the district spread out that far what the weather's gonna be.
Sue and I were riding bikes yesterday, and it rained in one portion of Fleming Island, but not in another.
Yeah.
So it rained in the portion that we were in.
Refreshing.
Next is pre-qualification of contractors. That's an every month event. Next is proportionate share mitigation between the school board and Triple B Ranch. Anything you want to add to that?
No, sir, that's just Annabelle Island. Annabelle Island has 5 phases. Phase 1 and 2 already had concurrency when they actually did the development plan. Phase 3, 4, and 5 has been sold. Therefore, that developer that they sold it to, they have to get proportionate share for the rest of the phases on that.
so that will be a KP product.
I gotta look and see who they sold it to. I can't remember exactly what builder it was, but all of them are in that area. KB Dreamfinders, they're all there. Miranda, all of them are over there. Yeah, exactly.
I just don't think it's enough money. What are you gonna do?
And we don't either.
So next is the Keystone Heights Visitor Concession Stand Contract Award. I know people in Keystone will be thrilled with
I
that.
don't know what to do.
But it's hard to believe that it's $500,000 to build a concession stand. It's just
It's
mind-boggling on all of it.
it is mind-boggling.
You have to run plumbing and everything. I mean, it's a brand new site.
Next is proportionate share mitigation between the board and Creekview in Highland Trail. Anything you want to add to that, Mr.?
Yes, sir. So This was a proportionate share mitigation that we entered into, I believe, back in '21. However, the developer has approached us and approached the county to annex a certain portion of land onto that proportionate share. We are not changing any of the terms as far as numbers, student generation, or anything like that. All they're doing is annexing that land, and most likely they're going to put age-restricted homes on that land, so it will not affect us as far as the school district. But as part of the entire development agreement, they have to transmit to the state, they have to annex it onto the proportionate share agreement.
Next item is the guaranteed maximum price related to Lake Asbury junior high classroom additions. And then you'll see the same sort of thing for Oakley, those next two items. And that's followed by the preliminary for the Lake Asbury project and the preliminary for the Oakley item. Anything you want to add to that?
So we had the bid opening for both of those preliminary bid openings about a week and a half ago. The preliminary numbers came in right at about $20 million. They're sharpening their pencils. They have to vet the contractors, make sure that the scope of work matches what we bid. And we're about 58,000 square feet, somewhere around there. Just to put it in perspective, right now, Florida DOE, they're allowing $406 per square foot. The actuals coming into DOE right now are $430 a square foot, and ours are coming in somewhere around $340 a square foot. So we're actually looking pretty good as far as how much we're paying per square foot. We'll also have a 7% savings on direct purchase, so we're going to purchase all the building materials ourselves. In the end, we'll be able to recoup that savings of 7%.
Okay. And then the last item is the kitchen cafeteria renovation at Lakeside Elementary School. And that completes the agenda. But before I turn it back to you, because I know you got two discussion items here, just one of the more popular questions I get from people in general is, what do you do during the summer? Like, anybody ever get that? Like the implication is, we're just relaxing and taking it easy. So far, just to kind of give you and everybody that works, in Clay County schools knows summertime is kind of intense to get ready for the new school year. So just a quick update on the school system in general. So if you recall, last week we had our One Clay Leadership Academy, which was about 800 teachers that came in. One of the ideas behind that is to empower teacher leaders, right? Because if you look at our school district, when you are towards the top end of the districts, it becomes harder to go one more step further, right? If you have a lot of room for growth, it becomes easier to have that growth. If you have little room for growth, then you have to look for ways in which to increase that growth and make the most of it. When you look at Clay County schools, I think we're second in social studies, fourth in science, ninth in math, and 12th in language arts. So there's still room for growth, but the growth, you need to look for alternate ways in which to maximize strategies when you're in that type of scenario. And so we've been working on this really for 4 years, which is empowering teachers to be teacher leaders among their group, and to do that through the PLC process, in which we focus on what do we want students to know, how will we know if they achieve that, and what do we do if they don't achieve that, and what do you do with the students that have achieved it, right? To keep them motivated, keep them going. And so that was a fantastic event, a lot of positivity. I was very surprised at how we gave out a trophy. The trophy had a maximum value of maybe $1.50. It was like from the, I'm kidding, it was kind of a very meager trophy, but they were fighting for the trophy. Yes. They were that competitive related to that. So that was very interesting. This week, starting tomorrow, and the reason why the meeting was moved to Monday from Tuesday, we have our leadership, which is supposed to be all administrators, school-based administrators. So some of the topics, just so you have an idea of some of the things we're working on for next year. Intentional benchmark aligned instruction, which is a simple way of saying teachers should be teaching the benchmarks, the standards, right? It makes sense that if students are assessed on the standards, it would make sense that you're teaching those items, right? So as a teacher, you have autonomy in some respects, but the what you teach piece of that really is determined by a group of standards that's given to us by the state, right? So that's part of it. Then we are also talking about grading practices. I know Ms. Hanson had brought this topic up, and so we're addressing the challenges of grading from a teacher perspective. And we started off with a very simple, 3 kind of guiding principles for the grading, and that's to do when it's graded, the type of assignments that are graded, and the communication piece with parents related to that, because many times arguments come up related to that. Now, grading itself, you can probably spend a whole day just on this topic because it's very complex. The intent is to start off with the most simple pieces of it and ensure that that's being done correctly across the district.
I put a lot of thought into this because it's very complicated, as you said. I think an area that I would love for everyone to start thinking about is that limiting, and I will talk about, once again, our lowest quartile, our ESE kids, the large majority of ESE kids, and I'm just going to be super focused on the fact that 40-something%, I don't know the actual final numbers, of students in Clay County cannot read on grade level. And so I would say my own grandchildren have teachers that weight their grades at 40% for a test, 30% for quizzes, and then they have only 2 or 3 of those in the course of a quarter. I don't understand why we have not set some kind of parameter. We know that our lowest quartile cannot read on grade level. We know that they suffer test taking because they can't read on grade level, yet teachers are allowed to set these weighted standards as low as 3rd grade that skew what I would call master standard grading. And what that means is we should not allow anyone to make a total of assessments more than 30%, as the state of Florida has set their final assessment at 30%. There is no way a kid who is 8 or 9 years old in 3rd grade should have most of their grades weighted on assessments, especially knowing that almost half our student population doesn't read on grade level. So, Mr. Borowski, I don't know if that's a good starting point, but many teachers don't even understand the weighted system. So for instance, I know a parent who brought me their information, and the lady had weighted participation as 10%, but didn't put a grade in. She didn't even know that weight is averaged into the other percentages, that pulls a kid's grade down, a whole letter grade, not to put a grade in. So what I'm asking is we can come up with some kind of parameter for these testings and assessments to not be more than 30%, which is where, by the way, most universities are, and our state of Florida sets their limits.
So you'd be happy to know a whole team of people have been working on this issue for the presentation.
I would be happy to know.
That we're going to bring forward. So you are correct. I think one thing I would kind of add with the reading data that you presented is that you always have to present data in context, right? Because everyone else in the state is in the same boat that you're in. So when you look at that and you use that data in context, Clay County is 2nd in the state of Florida, 2nd in the state of Florida, 6th grade literacy. 6th in the state of Florida for 10th grade literacy. Overall literacy is 12th in the state.
Well, I'm not arguing with you.
Hold on.
I agree.
That means that 55 other districts would love to have the data that we have. Now, can we improve? The answer is always yes to every time you ask the questions, can we improve? So I didn't want to get into a long tangent about grading practices, but I agree with you. And the reason why we're tackling this, or one of the reasons why, is because you brought the issue up. I would just ask you to realize there's a whole team of people that worked on this to kind of get, how do you bring this forward, right? Because it's complex, as you admit. So now we've developed a strategy, and you got to start off with baby steps. towards people, and that's kind of the approach. So grading practices, and then supportive novice teachers. One of the things that we're focused on is how do we support our teachers? If you hire almost 400 new people a year, then the process and the people that are involved in order to support those folks is important, and we tier those teachers, right? Some require more help than others. ESE and ESOL structures, as well as our school improvement plans we worked on. We're also going to talk a little bit about student behavior. Interestingly enough, in student behavior, the data shows a decline in stressor events, and how to create school-wide expectations and classroom expectations for better student behavior. Of course, we're going to talk about the SERP and MTSS. ESOL practice attendance was another topic that the board brought up. So the plan to increase attendance, as well as, I know through the attorney, we've had 2 meetings, one with the ADA and one with Judge Whittington about truancy court and bringing that back to have the ultimate end repository for those that don't follow the law. But most attendance issues, there's usually barriers as to why the student doesn't attend. So you have to deal with all those barriers first, and then the ones that don't listen to the help, then there's other avenues you have to go when that occurs. And so attendance is another big part of it, as well as curriculum in general. A whole day has been dedicated to school safety, right? As 1473 is implemented and the new legislation, it creates new opportunities for Clay County schools, and it requires a lot more thought related to that. So that's kind of what we're doing. I just wanted to give an update as to what we're doing related to that. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
The next item on our workshop agenda is review of the Neola proposed policy options, specifically related to public participation at board meetings. I didn't bring my hard copy with me. I don't know if you guys have it. And I know we're 2 board members short. But are you guys comfortable with moving forward on that? Do you have input regarding it?
Is this the way that,
Our board meetings are run.
so can we review that?
School visitor.
Oh, thank you.
So it's not-
Ms. Gilhausen, you did read,
No, this is different.
this is,
Is this the only copy you have, Ms. Honora?
I have several. No, that's different from what this is like.
It is different. Oh, well,
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
school visitor, what I saw.
hers has school visitors on the front.
So let's do, this is the only one.
Ms. Gilhausen?
Probably it.
Yes, Ms. Bola.
I'm sorry, I'm losing, your comment was disjointed, I didn't understand the topic, could you repeat it, please?
Of course, we're looking at the public participation at board meetings policy that Neola gave us at our
Thank you,
policy workshop.
thank you, got it.
And so my question was, did you guys have any input on any modifications you'd like to see, or are you comfortable putting it on the agenda for next week as is?
So in essence, we would be keeping our policy as the 3-minute
Yes.
time limit.
Yep.
And also, the only thing that I would question is that if we have more than a certain number of participants, perhaps providing the chair an opportunity to limit the comment time to 2 minutes. In other words, we had a meeting, oh gosh, it's been a couple of years, but we had close to 100 participants, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And if each of them took 3 minutes, that's a really lengthy period of time.
Yes.
But they all wanted to be heard, as I recall. And I'm wondering if we could build into the policy that after a certain number of cards have been completed, the amount of time for public comment will reduce to 2 minutes. Just a thought. I know that some counties do that.
I've heard the same.
Some school districts do that.
And I think another option that we have is instead of limiting each person's time to 2 minutes, is we could limit the time of public comment. So you could designate 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours if you really wanted to for public comment. And then whatever cards are left, I don't know how you would handle that, if you would give them an opportunity.
Mr. Blocker, are there parameters for something like this?
Well, and that's where we would be able to look at the number of cards, say, okay, if we say 2 minutes per card, then that will limit us to 3 hours of public comment, let's say.
Okay.
And I'm saying this is in one of those, situations where it's a hot topic.
Right.
And everybody wants to talk.
Right.
So,
Mr. Blocker has.
they're few and far between. I'm just wondering if you want to put that in as a backup.
Right. Let me, Mr. Blocker has some legal advice on that, so let's see what he.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Bolo, for bringing that up. The biggest challenge you have with public comment is making sure everyone has an equal opportunity to be heard. So we need to be careful that we do not limit for one group, like, hey, you'll have 1 or 2 minutes, and another group will have the full 3 minutes. So what may be better is to consider, I think what the chair recommended at the last hearing was maybe kind of limiting at the very beginning, saying, hey, at this meeting, but everyone has to have the same opportunity to be heard at the same amount of time. Now, the board can limit that. Y'all could set up where y'all have one public comment period that you can comment on everything, and it's going to be limited to 1 or 2 minutes. Generally, the courts have held 1 to 2 minutes is considered ample time, but we want to be careful that, hey, after 50 people, now we go to 1 minute per person. You just have to make sure it's equal for everybody, whatever the parameter is set on. Does that make sense?
So,
Mrs. Bolo, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So
Okay,
I was on you.
thank you. Just wonderful.
So it makes sense. Because, as I said, it's really, I love the 3 minutes. I didn't like the big numbers at first, but I like them now because it's very obvious. And it gives everyone the opportunity to speak. I think if the policy is passed and we publish the changes or any alterations that we make, that way we have that opportunity to say, oh yes, everyone's going to get the opportunity to speak. However, because of the volume of people, we may need to limit it. Something to that effect.
So if we look at the wording that's in this particular policy that they gave us, it does provide those options. So if you look where it says letter A, guidelines regarding the amount of time an individual has to address the board, that's where the 3 minute duration is established. And then letter B, procedures for allowing representatives of groups or factions on a proposition to address the board. So for example, if we had a special interest group show up and all of their members submitted a card to speak and they identified themselves as part of a specific group, the chair at that point could say, would you all like to designate one person to speak on behalf of your group rather than each individual in order to save time. And then there's another option, letter D. What's set out in here is a designated period of time for public comment of 30 minutes. And then it would take a vote of the board to extend that time outside of the 30-minute limit.
so Ms. Gilhousen, our current policy says, as we did the last meeting, if you want to address an agenda item, it seems to me when you address an agenda item, that 3 minutes is, people sometimes run out of time because they're addressing something complicated or something they don't like about an agenda item. If we do our public comment at the end, like we were talking about, is it possible then to limit that to 2 minutes
I think what he's
at
saying,
the end?
regardless of what they're speaking
Regardless.
of, everybody has to have the same opportunity to speak.
Okay, so public comment is at the end, then we would be able to vote on extending that time limit if we needed.
Yeah, on either, so we currently have agenda public comment, agenda related public comment section that I think by this policy would be 30 minutes. And then we would have another 30-minute section that's general public comment,
And where in the meeting would the general public comments take place?
the end,
At the end?
like we did this last time. So we do the agenda related public comment prior to taking up a vote on the consent agenda. And then we take action on the discussion and the consent agenda, and then we hear general public comment once the business is taken care of.
Madam Chair, just one point of clarification. So for general public comment, Florida law does not require general public
Yeah.
comment. That is at the pleasure of the board.
Right.
So that is something that y'all can limit. For agenda item public comment, you have to give the public the opportunity to be heard, and you have to do it equally.
So we could do 2 minutes for general comment and 3 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, you could. And some boards where I represent do that. They will say, look, you know, you have 2 minutes and they can limit it. Now, you still want to make sure you're not arbitrary because the courts look at it, well, if they're saying something that y'all don't want to hear, then you start cutting it off. So you want to be just very controlled. But Florida law only requires it for agenda comment on the agenda. So that's where we have to make sure we're just equal in what we do.
And we did discuss putting it at the very end of the board meeting. So where it was at the last meeting was kind of in the back 1/3, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the outcome was of our discussion about putting it at the end of the meeting. Many school boards do that for the general comment. I mean, what do we think about that?
So I have a couple thoughts. First, I know we talked about hearing general public comment at the conclusion of the meeting. My concern, you like that idea?
I like that.
My concern is that we do have board members who want to respond to general comment, and if we're going to do that, my feelings are that we need to be in session, because I worry that we would end up discussing something that could potentially once at some future time be voted on. So just in order to keep us, and I don't know if you share my opinion on
Like
that,
sunshine?
but to keep us in the sunshine, I think would be the best practice. Simply because there are times when general comment is made and we'd like the superintendent to respond to set the record straight, or we'd like, you know, if they're having questions or accusations about something a board member has done and a board member feels like I need to respond to that for clarity. I can think of times where that's happened in the past, but I worry if we hold it to the conclusion of the meeting, then we can't. I don't
So
think
there
you
wouldn't
could.
be an opportunity if we did it at the end, we would have to add another section to the agenda for us to respond? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying if we conclude the meeting and then
Oh.
hear public comment, we wouldn't be able to respond. The reason I thought we put it where we did was because we still have board comment and superintendent comment and legal comment after the general public comment. So that way you do have the opportunity, if you don't want to, which I don't think it's wise to get in a back and forth with somebody who's come to the dais.
Yeah.
I think the best practice is let them say what they need to say, and then when it's our turn to speak, if we want to address it, we can.
I agree. So our options are public comment could be 2 minutes, and we could expand if we need to the amount of time by vote. And that vote happens at the moment, at the meeting, right? Is that how that would
Yes,
work?
yeah. We could look at, how many cards we have and make that decision.
Madam Chair, what you said is absolutely correct. Most boards that do it that way do it exactly as you described it. So one of the last agenda is general public comment, then the superintendent, then individual board members, the attorney can respond. The one other thing, I'd have to look at your rules again, but the chair can also decide to extend public comment without a board vote. So that's something that y'all might want to consider, not limiting the chair in that regard. Just by right, the chair can always say, hey, I'm going to allow an extra 10 minutes of public comment. Are there any objections from the board? And make it a little bit more informal. That way it doesn't require a formal vote.
Okay.
Just a thought. I know some like to do a formal vote, but it's understood the chair has, your role is to run the meetings and kind of assess the mood of what's going on and say, look, I'm gonna allow an extra 15 minutes of public comment. Are there any objections from the board? If there are, then the board member could object, and then you can ask for consensus. But I'd recommend not limiting the authority of the chair in that regard or making a formal vote, just making it a little bit more informal. Does that make sense?
Can the chair, if someone is speaking and they go past their 2 or 3 minutes, I have seen where chairs allow them to finish. Is that also in the gray area of we're not giving everyone the same amount of time?
It could be that there has been a couple of court decisions on that where it appeared that, so the example, not getting too into the weeds, there was an issue, I believe it was in Jacksonville, where there was some attacks on the city council, but then someone got up and was speaking and praising the city council and the mayor, and so they said, well, we're gonna give an extra few minutes to let them finish their praise, and so you do need to be careful, you know, because it could look like it's being arbitrary, and that's the biggest complaint. It almost becomes a First Amendment issue at that point, that you're restricting speech that is favorable or not favorable. So I'd encourage not to give people more time than that minute. I mean, someone's mid, you know, sometimes you say you have an extra 30 seconds, but you kind of want to do that for everybody, and then it kind of creates where we're giving people even more time. You know, again, it's up to the chair, you know, and you're kind of rolling the dice. Is someone really going to go sue over that? Maybe not.
So in the moment, maybe.
Right. Right, so usually the courts have found that the chair is in the best position to kind of assess the mood of public comment, but you really do want to try to stick to those rules, and then the chair can say, look, we have another 30 people lined up, say, look, I'm gonna extend it for 15 minutes, are there any objections from the board? If there are, the board can be heard, say, okay, well, you know, let's get consensus, and then kind of go from there, but the board chair really makes that call,
Okay.
you know.
So that would require altering this policy. So the letter D on the backside, designated period of time for public comment. So the portion of the meeting, do you guys, first of all, do you want to keep the 30-minute limit? Do you guys like that?
I do not.
You do not want to keep it?
And talk me out of it, but I'm just thinking, if we do have a group and it goes beyond that, you know, I just want to make sure everybody feels equal in the 30-minute time limit.
We've never limited it in the past
Yeah.
in our policy, so I'm fine with continuing on with the way
Because
it's always
it
been.
doesn't happen that often.
It doesn't.
And the
Until
board
it
could
does.
extend it.
Yeah.
Because the chair could give the rest of the people the opportunity to speak anyway, right?
If we set the 30-minute limit, then yes, the board, what he's saying is we could give the board chair the authority to extend
Ms.
it.
Gilpelson?
Yes, Ms. Bola?
I am not in favor of limiting the amount of time for public comment.
Okay.
My intention earlier was if we have an inordinate number of people who are wanting to make a public comment, simply to say, okay, we've got 100 people who want to make a public comment about the athletic field. We are going to be limiting this time to 2 minutes. That was my intent. We normally do not have that many people at our meetings making public comment. I would prefer to just disregard my statement from earlier, because we're now getting to weeks where we're saying, oh, we want to limit the public comment. I do not want to do that at all. I don't want to limit the time to a 30-minute time span. I think that is far too limited. And I like the idea of allowing public comment before we speak in order to respond to the public comment if that's necessary.
Okay. Well, I'm comfortable with, like I said, keeping things the way that we've always done them. I don't think we need to limit public comment. In those instances.
I agree.
In those
I agree.
instances where it has been lengthy, we've implemented some procedural things like having people stand in line as opposed to waiting for their name to be called. And like, you know, I think it gives us that opportunity here under letter B, when you have a large group of people and they're all saying the same thing, the board chair can then say, you know, in the essence of time, is there anybody who would prefer to just allow one representative to speak for your group? And then it's up to them. It's not the board saying you can't speak. Are you guys comfortable with that? So what we could do is just strike D from this policy. All right, we'll do that.
Mrs.
And then-
Nelson, under A, number 2, where it says the time period may be extended by the presiding officer. Okay,
The first A or the second A? First A?
first A.
Just for the simple fact of what Mr. Blocker just said, I think there are times when whatever the person is saying, it's important for them to be able to finish their sentence.
I might even have difficulty speaking.
Exactly, so I like to have that option. Are you guys comfortable with that? Okay. And then we have some options following D. Hold on. The presiding officer of each board meeting at which public participation is permitted shall administer the rules of the board for its conduct. So here are the rules. A, Public participation shall be permitted as indicated on the order of business and before the board takes official position on any action item under consideration. We already do that, so you guys want to keep that, right? Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and will be requested to preface their comments by an announcement of their name, address, and group affiliation if and when appropriate. We already do that, so check that. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Staff members shall not be expected to answer questions from the audience unless called upon by the board chairman or the superintendent. That's what we do already. Tape or video recordings are permitted under the following condition. No obstructions are created between the board and the audience. No interviews are conducted in the meeting room while the board is in session. No commentary, adjustment of equipment, or positioning of operators is made that would distract either the board or members of the audience while the board is in session. I don't think we have those rules, but I like them.
I thought that
So we had D3
So,
at our last board meeting when
Right,
people
I
were
think-
running around
yeah, if we had
carrying
had,
large equipment.
right, if we had had this policy, I think that would have given us kind of a leg to be able to say, please don't put your camera in people's faces.
You could set up a table over there.
That was very intimidating and I felt like disruptive to the meeting, so. yeah.
But they could set up in one place, but.
Right, but they don't need to be putting the camera in the audience members' faces.
Right.
All right, letter
I
E.
agree with that.
The presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. We do that currently, so you can check that one. Request any individual to leave the meeting when that person does not observe reasonable decorum.
Ms. Gilhousen, can I get some clarification on E1? I know that if, let's say, someone were to get up to read something that wasn't obscene or abusive, but was, let's say we have children present, at some point, does that fit in here? It might not be these things, but there's 25 F words about to come out, and
I think that would be considered obscene, yeah. So the chairman could then say.
that fits under that?
I think so.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
You could even add inappropriate.
Inappropriate, I think would be a great thing to add, because at any time there could be something inappropriate. It would give us more flexibility. I'm not a lawyer, but
No, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, these are not free speech zones. These are not considered street. These are business meetings, so you aren't allowed to limit, profanity, and it also is being videotaped or recorded, so that's another reason to keep it.
So should we add inappropriate?
I would like to add inappropriate.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Are you comfortable with that, Ms. Clark?
Well, I'm almost thinking that everything else covers that, but if we want to be more clear, that's fine.
Okay.
Agreed.
Do you think obscene and profane are the same? Do we need to add profane?
I guess profanity would be inappropriate, right? Maybe?
Yes.
I don't know if there's a legal definition that we have to meet here, or,
Well, I guess I was just thinking with inappropriate might cover, there's some, as our society kind of evolves or devolves, there's terminology that maybe 30 years ago was not inappropriate, but now it's considered inappropriate. So
Yeah.
it allows the board to be more current with,
okay.
Well, maybe inappropriate at
Right,
the time.
right, exactly.
So should we add profane, or do you think we're comfortable?
I think that's probably covered under obscene, but then inappropriate I think does make sense, because there might be something that was not inappropriate 10, 20 years ago, but we might say, look, we need to avoid
Okay.
a terminology here.
So item 3, request the assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of a disorderly person when that person's conduct interferes with the orderly progress of the meeting. That's already something that we are allowed to do. And then call for a recess or an adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action. I haven't ever seen that done, but I guess it would probably be good to have in there.
And just as a legal, this is where we as lawyers are boring get to read, it's always important, Ms. Gillenhels, I know you and I have had this conversation, it's always important to identify this behavior is disruptive on the record, please remove it. I think the one time I've seen this since here was then Mr. Friedman started reading some very profane. I think Ms. Gilhousen correctly said, this is disruptive. So those are the magic words that have to be uttered. This is disruptive to the good order and discipline, so just something to keep in mind, so.
All right, the last section, no board action shall be taken on requests made during public discussion unless the board declares the matter to be an emergency in accordance with current law. Any other request that the board chooses to take action on shall be placed on an agenda for a subsequent meeting, which that's our current policy. Requirement for public comment on action items does not apply to an official act that must be taken to deal with an emergency situation affecting public health, welfare, or safety if compliance with the requirements would cause an unreasonable delay in the ability of the board to act. An official act involving no more than a ministerial act, including but not limited to approval of minutes and ceremonial proclamations. A meeting that is exempt from the public meetings law, or a meeting at which the board is sitting in its quasi-judicial capacity. These exceptions do not affect the right of a person to be heard as otherwise required by law or board policy. You guys good with all that? All right. So Ms. Honora, I think we can let Neola know that we want to make a few adjustments and then we can add it to next week's meeting. All right. Last agenda item is discussion of the internal auditor. Ms. Hanson, that was your item.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate putting this on the workshop. I know we had discussed giving the board time to do some research on this, and I did some research as well. I would first like to address Ms. Bola's board comments at the last meeting. I would prefer that board members do not speak of other board members, especially during a time where we cannot readdress or make a point of that conversation. She chose not only to address just me, but it was a 20-minute speech that in my opinion was hijacking what we had decided would be on a workshop agenda item for us to research and for us as a board. Not one person has authority. We are equal members, 5 board members, 5 equal board members. A lot of the detail that came out in board member comments, I'm just going to give some examples. She cited comments or quotes sourced from Greta from St. Johns County. What she cited was, I've been to many financial forums with FSBA, and this person from St. Johns County, they don't have one, they have $1 million budget. It went on and on and on. But what Ms. Bola failed to mention was it was Greta at the last Advanced Finance Forum that put the slide up and made us know and made us become aware of this law. It was very conflicting to me that the same person being used as a source was the person who, with her co-presentator, was the one presenter that put the law up there to make us realize the importance of an internal auditor. At that time, the CFO, who is not a lawyer, by the way, the CFO, very nice person from St. Johns County, Greta, who is not a lawyer, did not speculate, state, or say in any kind of way at the Advanced Finance Forum, which I was the only one there, that, oh no, this law really doesn't read or work as it sounds. So I was confused as to why we were speaking about a person who gave me the information in board comments as if I hadn't been there to see her give me the law. Ms. Bolo also cited 2 main reasons why we should not have an internal auditor. Her first reason was the many audits that take place in the district. I went and saw someone to get some information about audits. We do indeed have audits. We have state audits that happen every 3 years, but those audits are only on certain things. No one's coming in to look to see if they could help us improve our security. No one's coming in as a gotcha moment to ask somebody what's going on over there. They come to look at certain items. Indeed, we do pay for an external internal audit once a year, I have a copy of how that occurs because I requested this information. And we've had the same person, I don't know, maybe 7 years. They too, we know ahead of time what they're gonna look at, basically. And so for me, that's not really what an internal audit is for. It was suggested at the Advanced Finance Forum that you hire someone different every couple of years without parameter to come in and look. That's how you safeguard taxpayer dollars. So the fact that the audits that everyone in the state of Florida goes through every 3 years by the Auditor General is not what an internal auditor does. It's just not. The second thing, the main reason is we couldn't afford it. Well, I'm here to tell you, if we can't afford an internal auditor, then that's why we need one. With a $500 million budget plus an increasing budget, to say that having an extra set of eyes on taxpayer dollars is not needed, when we also say we can't afford them, we can afford, when we need to start up a whole truancy program. We can afford a whole ESL program. We can afford redesignating people into higher positions to give them a raise. We can afford taking 7 mindsets from $70,000 to $203,000. We can afford pretty much every single thing that anyone has ever needed or requested. To say we can't afford, and the average cost in Florida is $65,000 to $85,000, to say we can't afford, which is like one position, administrative position at a school level, is absolutely ludicrous. I do not appreciate the attempt at authority over a workshop item when school board members don't or can't respond. It was inappropriate, and that conversation should have been held today when all of us could have a time to talk about that. And so the main reasons that and Mr. Blocker, do you have the law that, I left it at home on my paper?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so. Let me see here.
Could you read it? It's short, and it says shall, but I can't remember exactly what it says.
Yes, ma'am, so it's, I believe it's Florida statute 1001.42. There's a section L, and I believe this is the one a while back that you had called me about, so I can, if the chair will allow. Let me see here. So internal auditor may, or in the case of a school district receiving annual federal, state, and local funds in excess of $500 million, shall employ an internal auditor. The scope of the internal auditor shall not be restricted to include every functional program area of the school system. So I think when I was just reading this again to kind of refresh my recollection, so y'all may hire an internal auditor, just kind of at y'all's discretion, but you shall when it's required when the school district receives $500 million in federal, state, and local funds, which is essentially y'all's funding sources. Y'all do have some grants and stuff like this, but
Mr. Blocker,
yes, ma'am.
how did that statute start? Did it say the school board or the school district?
It says the internal auditor may, or in the case of a school district receiving annual federal, state, and local funds in excess of $500 million, shall employ an internal auditor. The scope of the internal audit shall not be restricted. So,
Who shall employ them? Does it say the board or the district?
the school district. School district.
It says school district, not school board. That's different than what we've been discussing.
But it also goes into, there's a second part about who the internal auditor reports to. Reports to the school board, unless we designate that report to someone else.
But we don't hire them.
Wait, and I'm sorry, and just and my colleague here just pointed out, I'm sorry, because I was, so this statute actually covers let me read here. This statute 1001.42 is the heading is powers and duties of the district school board.
School board.
So it actually flows from that. It outlines the actual authority of the school board. So even though it says the school district, when you read, this is a long statute. This is a 40-page statute. But it starts out with the authority of the school board. Then the way I would interpret that is the school board can vote, and then the school district would hire. But it's actually under the authority of the board.
We would direct the superintendent, or, because we can't direct the superintendent, he's elected. So
Correct. So this is where it's a little, these statutes are not greatly written. So it's not, so the way I would interpret this, it's not just at the discretion of the school district. I think y'all have a role in this, under the statute, y'all have a role in deciding this. So I think if y'all voted to move forward with internal auditor, then obviously the superintendent, that would be a policy. Y'all would vote on a policy to hire, or we would want an internal auditor, and then, I guess you would.
I think from what Ms. Bola shared, and just from what I've experienced having been on the board, the district does have an internal audit every year.
Right, absolutely, and that's correct. I was just trying to answer your question about is this specific to the district?
Right.
Or is this under?
So it was brought up as a enumerated power, like our ability as a board. It is listed under state statute as a power of a board. I'm always very careful to make sure it doesn't, at some point the board must have approved funding for this internal auditor that we've been using forever. But this was specifically given at the Florida School Board Association Advanced Finance Forum as a power of the board. We, district superintendent have their powers, and this was one of the powers listed.
I guess my question is, so we have the power to authorize that position to be filled, right? And we've already done that because the district has an internal audit every year.
They have an internal audit. They do not have an internal auditor that works for us. We do one day.
I'm confused by that because I think the way that I'm understanding the statute, we authorize the position, but we don't do the hiring. The district does that.
We don't do the hiring, but to have an annual audit report is much different than hiring a year-round full-time employee. An internal auditor is completely separate. It has nothing to do with hiring someone to do an internal audit once a year.
So I disagree because I think.
May I have an opportunity to speak?
Yes, Ms. Bola, can you give me 1 second to finish my thought and then
Yes.
I'll recognize
Yes.
you? So, can you hear us okay? Ms. Bola?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, oh yeah.
And so I'm thinking, the way we do legal services, in the past we had an attorney who was on his own, that was a district employee. And then we moved to what we have now, where we contract with a firm for legal services. So to me, this is kind of what we're asking, or what I'm hearing you ask for, is kind of a reversal. So to go from having a firm that does the internal audit yearly, you'd rather have an employee that does the internal audit yearly.
It's not an internal audit. It's an every single day person. I'm not sure how to explain this. It is somebody that doesn't look at one thing, or it's an actual position. And maybe they spend the next 3 months working with the district on securing our internal accounts at our schools. Maybe they are allowed to look at whatever they like. Maybe they want to go in and look at how secure our technology is. Maybe they want to look at how secure is our bank transfers from. This is somebody who looks at every aspect of our procedures, our policies, works with the people to make sure that everything is locked tight. They, in general, they find they make their money back within a month of their salary. They safeguard the money. They come to the board and say, you're doing all this really great, but there's an area of weakness.
So, what district does that?
I don't have, there are districts that do it. I don't have a list of them. I have to go home and get my list. But
what's fuzzy for me is that, from what I'm understanding from Mr. Blocker, we have the authority to authorize that position, but do we have the authority to manage that position, or does that fall to the district office?
So it's unclear. So essentially the statute is I'm reading it, and I've read this several times, it's not, and candidly, it's poorly written, but it is outlining the authority of the school board. So you all have the authority to create budgets, oversee budgets. Obviously, the district has a role in that. What this is saying is, I'll read it again, the internal auditors, that's the heading, may, or in the case of a school district receiving annual federal, state, and local funds in excess of $500 million, shall employ an internal auditor. The scope of the internal audit shall not be restricted and shall include every functional program area of the school system. So this falls under a statute that is empowering the school board. But going to your point, I think the board has the authority to hire outside auditors as well. I don't know that it has to be an internal position. It authorizes the board to hire an internal position. It can be an outside auditor as well. I think this is just giving y'all as a board the authority to hire an internal auditor. You may do it if it's under 500 million. If it's over 500 million, then it's required.
So
that internal auditor.
So that employee would belong to the board? That would be like what our legal counsel is?
That's the way it's written. That's.
I guess, so I don't want to be the first school district to do that.
No, I completely understand.
I would like to
completely
know that
understand.
there are other districts who have done it and done it successfully, because should there be a legal issue, I don't want to be the precedent.
I completely understand. So I've reached out to other colleagues. I think generally what is done is that outside firms are hired.
So it's not an internal position.
Well, I think some do. I just have not spoken to, I think in our region, it's generally an outside firm
Okay.
is hired to do it. But
Mr. Hall?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ms. Bola, yes.
the statute doesn't allow you to
have
hire
the-
internal.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Initially, when I brought this up at the school board meeting, at our last workshop, numerous people spoke about the internal auditor, not just one individual school board member. It was a discussion. We were talking about something that was not transparent to the community. My intention with my comments were to be more transparent to the community as to what we were discussing. We currently have an internal account auditor. It's my understanding that, I believe it's Lake County, hired their internal accounts auditor who had worked for them for close to 30 years as an internal auditor. But that person was very familiar, obviously, with all of the different accounts with the school district. Within the other areas, I spoke specifically to Gretchen Saunders, who is the CFO in St. Johns County. She specifically pointed out in the statute, it says shall, not will. And we have had this discussion before on other statutes. Shall means we have the opportunity to hire someone. It is not a requirement by the state, from my understanding. This was pointed out by her because she had just gone through an audit with the state. They do not have a specific internal auditor for their $1.2 billion accounts. Their $1.2 billion, their budget. So when you're looking at an internal auditor hired by the school board, there is not I just don't believe it's necessary for us to hire an additional person when we have the audits that we're doing. They are published. If we want access to any account, we have every opportunity for access to every account. I know that our internal account auditor, we are hiring an additional person to assist that person because of volume of internal accounts that we have in the school. It is our responsibility as a board, as Ms. Hanson has pointed out, that we are in charge of the budget. We have to also allow the professionals to be professional. When we are hiring or when we're buying some of these programs, it's based on the invaluable research that's done by the people who are in the trenches to get the programs that are going to best benefit our children. In listing an opportunity that the board did hire Mr. Blocker, we hired the entire firm. We have absolutely increased our legal expenses over the last year, and that's what I'm talking about. We are spending money that we haven't spent in the past. I looked also at the family empowerment scholarship. That's coming directly out of our budget. Yes, we can afford programs that are going to benefit our children. An internal auditor is not going to cost $60,000. It's going to cost more like $110,000 to $120,000 because we would have to hire a CPA. We would have to hire someone who we currently use. We have, every year, we do an RFP for our CPA firm. Just because we happen to use Purvis Gray more than once doesn't mean that we are settling on one accounting firm. We do RFPs, we have other accounting firms give us their costs, and basically, we have used Purvis Gray because they have probably come in at the best cost. One of the benefits also is that they do understand all of our accounts. They understand the workbook requirements. They understand the federal guidelines. They understand internal accounting and what we are doing to improve our internal accounting within each of the schools. Purvis Gray knows us. They know what our accounts are. And within their audit, if they see anything askew, they are certainly going to report that. And that's what we can do. As I said, the most recent Purvis Gray audit is sitting right there under transparency. My intent at the school board meeting was to educate the population, to let them know what we have in currently, what our costs are. We've not come what we said. Last 3 years, we spent $2 million on family scholarships. And now we're spending 10 to 15. We have to budget 10 to 15 million dollars for parental choice scholarships. That's huge in relationship to our budget. Our budget is half of what St. John's County budget is. Our budget is minuscule in comparison to what Duval County's budget is. And bottom line, they're looking for a missing $1 billion. The internal auditor would not help them with that. They are in need of finding sources where they can save money as well. We could go on and on about a reserve fund. Last year, St. John's County had to take $26 million out of their reserve to pay for salaries. We don't even have $26 million in our reserve. We have $16 million. We have to be cost efficient. And just to go out to get an internal auditor for the sake of having another employee of the school board, I think is absolutely ludicrous.
So,
I think it would be incredibly irresponsible of us. Thank you.
so, we attended a, conference, school board member conference last week, where we learned a little bit about, budget, management options. And one of the resources, that was suggested was, ER strategies. And the way it was presented was that ER strategies would work with us as a board, to delve into our budget and give us some suggestions on, how we could improve on, processes, on spending, on all of that. So before we move forward with, creating a new position and spending that money, I think it would behoove us to do some study into what are we currently doing, how is it working, how is it not working, and kind of have a third-party analysis of that. That's my personal preference, and obviously it's a board decision, but I was impressed at the training conference that might be a really good option so that we know what we're looking to accomplish before we spend an amount of money to accomplish what's the goal, what's the end goal, what are we trying to achieve. I think we need to establish that first, and then you hire or not according to what needs you've identified. But I think we need to identify the financial need and the financial objectives first. I don't know if that resonates with you guys, and obviously Ms. Hanson's not here to weigh in on it.
May I add my 2 cents?
Please do.
It might be 3 or 4, actually, or Nichols' work. I like your last comment because I think we as a board don't know what direction we want to go into and what we want to look for. I know we've talked about that the system, and I've talked to Dr. Legutko, that the system is antiquated and it's very hard to pull information. And I'm still waiting on info from questions I asked a month ago at the workshop. And that's not blaming anybody, it's just not easy to get the information. So I too, after Ms. Hanson and Ms. Gola spoke about after Ms. Hanson visited Mary Kirk, I took it upon myself to also visit Mary Kirk and to learn more about the processes of the schools. I was very happy to meet Mary Kirk. I'm glad that we stole her from St. John's. I think she's doing a wonderful job, but has a very tough job because she's having to teach old dogs new tricks, and that's never easy. One of my questions was, when you go to the symphony, when you go to the zoo even, you can't use dollars. Everything is changing to where, it's not that it's not a trust factor, it's too much when you go to a football game, and there's different ways of taking in money and buying tickets, and the control is very difficult, and everybody wants to do it differently. And Mary's job is to consolidate and make it to where it's very simple up front. And she is not, I don't believe, and Ms. Troutman, you can find out, but I don't believe her title is that of an auditor. I believe hers is more of a control, what would be the right, I don't know, I wrote it down, she told me, coordinator, regarding all the school's funds. And it's a really tough position.
title.
But basically, when the state comes in or Harvest Freight comes in, they're doing what Dr. Legutko has to make sure that we've done, and that we're in compliance with the Red Book. But you can have multiple types of audits, and I think that's where we're at. We have to understand what type of audit, if we're going to do it, that we really need. And I would like, if we're going to do it, I would like for them to say, hey, these are the needs of your system as far as upgrades, to where it is much more transparent. And we can pull an item and see all the money, where that line item is coming from, all the transactions that relate to that. So I think we ought to get to the point where we find out exactly what it is that we need. But I'm not in the mindset that the school board has just been spending money with getting a new law firm or the police. I think what the law firm has brought to the table is such a large umbrella, especially with the truancy. If we can get a handle on that, that's $18.5 million that we're losing. There's a big savings, I think, with going with this law firm for this district. And as far as the police, I'm not seeing a big difference. I mean, I will admit now, I was very reluctant this last year to go with advanced communications. But all of this is coming from the millage money, or could come from the millage. We spent $6.5 million between the schools for this audio enhancement, and we felt it was very important, but we didn't question that. So we're not even spending that on the police. So I don't know. I just don't want to give the public the assumption that we're just out here wasting a lot of money, because we're not. And I think.
Coordinator of internal accounts.
Thank you. So she's not an auditor, and we are so blessed to have her. I know a lot of people probably are fighting with trying to set it up with clay bucks or whatever it's termed, but it's very important that we have control and that every school do it the same way. But anyway, I
Ms.
think,
Clark, I
yes.
did not insinuate that we were wasting money. I'm just saying that as we grow, we definitely are going to be required to spend more money. That's a given.
Oh, absolutely.
The bottom line, though, is that there's still so many uncertainties in some of the requirements that the state has placed on us that we have to be able to accommodate those as well. The millage money, most definitely. I understand millage is for safety. We have used that money for safety and security, the best way that we can possibly communicate, the best way we can possibly harden our schools. The bottom line, however, is that the millage money is a mill that is voted on by the community.
Exactly.
And if for some reason, and I can't imagine that they would say, no, we don't want safety in their schools. However, we are not guaranteed that money. And so we have to obviously spend that with the greatest amount of force possible so that we can, in the event, if, and God forbid, that it ever happened, that in the event that the public would not approve that mill, we would have to have some money to back it up because we could not afford it in our budget currently. So that I am not insinuating that we are wasting money. I am basically indicating that it is costing more for what we need to do. And the position that you're talking about, the title is an internal accounts auditor, but it is a support person position. And the additional person that we want to hire, and I don't believe that the additional person has been hired yet, but that is also a support person position that works with Dr. Odetko.
Can I make a point of order? I'd like to respond. I'm sorry my phone went off. I was trying to actually get into my home computer, which I can. And I guess I'm disappointed in the month that's gone by. I guess it was less than a month because it's a short term in between that we, as board members, I feel like haven't done our due diligence because one of the documents, and I'm just going to make a couple copies and I'm going to read something from Orange County Public Schools. And maybe that will help with what you were asking about, Ms. Gilhausen. One, it is never irresponsible to have a second set of eyes on gigantic amounts of money. We don't need to say it's irresponsible to have someone guard our taxpayer dollars along with district resources. That is not irresponsible. So, internal auditors, by the way, are not all CPAs. And so Orange County Public Schools, there's other schools too, but this is what I could get into right now. Let me take these off. The Internal Auditor Department. They have a department. It's more than just an internal accounts coordinator. Provide independent, objective assurance, and you guys could go home and look up Orange County Public Schools. Consulting services designed to add value and improve the district's operations. Improve the district's operations. It helps the district achieve its objectives by systematically evaluating and improving the effectiveness of risk management, control and governance, and the implementation of best practices. We're so focused on dollars that we forget there's a lot that needs to happen around taxpayer dollars. The scope of the work is quite lengthy. I could send it to you if you guys would like. Internal audit scope includes evaluating districts' internal control systems and its processes on achieving stated goals and objectives, suggesting improvements, reporting to school board and other functions as indicated by Florida Statute 1001.42. The bullet points that they have assess the district's risk management, governance, and internal control systems. Provide an overview of the effectiveness of the internal control system. Ms. Bullitt talked about we have a close relationship, or they're close to us, so they understand what we're doing. That's what you don't want. You want someone looking in saying, this is real risky here. There was a county in Florida that sent a $16 million check via a secure line to a contractor for a new school, and it was hijacked. This is what these people do. This is risk management of your funds. assessing issues and concerns at school board or management request, review specific matters, review existing operations or programs to determine if results are consistent with those expectations, develop of new systems to determine if progress, results, and testing are consistent with established goals and objectives, perform value-added process analysis. Notice they don't say go in and look at something to see if it's right. This is a holistic job, and it safeguards. I learned at the Advanced Finance Forum many districts are losing millions of dollars based on cybersecurity, how smart crooks have gotten, their ability to mimic with AI our voices. If there's voice controls at bank, AI can call and sound like Dr. Legucco. There is a lot going on right now. Systematically evaluate the district's efficiency. We get so much paper all the time, I can tell you, to evaluate our efficiency. As Ms. Clark stated, there are better systems that we could be utilizing that save money and time. District's efficiency and effectiveness, and coordinate the work of outside auditing firms. This isn't about looking at how are they spending the money. This is about what can we do better, how can we protect it. I would implore the board to start looking at why other districts do these and why legislation might have indicated that whether you believe it's shall or will, whatever, I can tell you I have concerns after being at the Advanced Finance Forum and hearing an onslaught of problems that are brand new and specific to today's problems that have not been tightened up in budgets. The security systems have not been tightened up. There's no one looking other than the humdrum 1 year annual audit. An audit is separate. This isn't even going to look at where was this money spent. This looks at when it was spent, could we have done it better? Do we have recommendations for the board that could save money? Can we protect the processes better? This is not the same thing as what we are thinking it is. Also, Ms. Skipper's not here, and I don't know if I can ask the chair to read her letter because she's not here on the phone.
And before I do that though, Mr. Blocker wanted to clarify some of the comments.
If I could, and I apologize, Madam Chair, when you asked me, I was trying to, and I want to thank my colleague, Mrs. Miles, for pointing out. So there are a number, what I was trying to figure out was how other districts have, I had reached out to some of their surrounding districts, but it appears that Orange County the board does hire an internal auditor, Polk County, I believe Duval County, I think you found several others. So it is the board directly hiring an internal auditor that reports directly to the board. So I can circulate that to you. Obviously, this is y'all's decision. I'm not trying to weigh in one way or the other, but I reached out to a couple other counties. It's obvious that every county handles this a little bit differently, but Orange County, Polk County, I think Duval, I think, were there any others that I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I'm still looking, but also.
Mr. Houghton, I like your idea about doing some further research, and I appreciate Mr. Blocker having done some of that research. Could we please, and I'm going to be sort of a suggestion of being for specificity, to be specific. Could we get the county, if they have an internal auditor or not, and I think we might be able to get this statewide actually somehow, what they do for internal accounting purposes in that respect, internal accounting or not, and also the value of their budget. Because Clay County's budget versus Duval County's budget versus Orange County's budget, I think it is a fact that we do need to take into consideration as well. And with your suggestion, Ms. Gilhausen, about doing further research, I think we might want to go that direction. Thank you.
So Mr. Blocker, if you wouldn't mind sending that to all the board members so we have the information. Really, the research portion of it is from a legal aspect, is what I would like to see. How do they go about it? Are we creating a job description? Are we creating a policy? What is the management of that position? Whose authority does that reside with? So what's the legal way to go about standing that up would be my question for you.
Yes,
And then the research portion of it that I think we should do as a board, the ERS, the Education Resource Strategies company that was referred to us by the Conservative Coalition of School Boards, I think would be a really good first step. And I think you agreed with me, Ms. Clark, that I think to have it essentially is having them do exactly what you were talking about. Have you looked at their website?
A little bit.
Okay. Mr. Blocker said that I'm not distributing information to board members. Can you send that out as well?
Yes, ma'am, I will, and just so y'all know, it may come from Mrs. Miles as well, so she's gonna help me kind of research that, but we'll pull the actual legal documents that the boards have used. I think Orange County is using a charter. They actually have a charter that their board created, so we'll prepare those and send those. And again, when you first asked the question, I was going off to my conversations from the local St. John's, but obviously other counties are doing it differently. I just want to make the board aware of that so I didn't lead you all in the wrong direction. So.
All right, so Ms. Skipper's comments. This is from Erin Skipper. She addresses board members. I'm writing to express my strong support for moving forward with the vote to establish an internal auditor position within our school district. The implementation of an internal auditor is a critical step towards ensuring transparency, accountability, and financial integrity in our operations. An internal auditor will provide an independent evaluation of our financial practices, help identify areas for improvement, and ensure that resources are utilized effectively to support our educational mission. I believe that this position will not only safeguard our financial assets, but also enhance public trust in our district's governance. It's imperative that we take proactive measures to maintain the highest standards of financial oversight and compliance. I urge the board to proceed with the vote and approve the establishment of this essential role because it is law. Having another set of eyes on our taxpayers' dollars should never be a question. Thank you, Erin Skipper. So on this website for ER strategies, let me just tell you their approach. It says ERS empowers school system leaders to make transformative shifts in resources, structures, and practices so that all students, especially those with greatest learning needs and those furthest from opportunity, attend a school where they can learn and thrive. We believe that for every school to succeed, for every student, schools must look very different from the rigid class sizes, fixed time blocks, and undifferentiated teacher roles that still define school today. Ensuring that student and teacher learning is designed in a fiscally sustainable way will require significant resource shifts. That's why our work focuses on the larger picture, how resources work together to create high-performing systems. ERS supports the creation of high-performing school systems that establish the structures and conditions for high-quality schools at scale, allowing all students to attend a school where they can learn and thrive. In order to achieve our mission, we publish free tools and publications, run invitation-only learning sessions and webinars, convene and support cohorts of district leaders working together on these issues across the country, and offer just-in-time services directly to districts and states on strategy design, professional learning, implementation support, and more. We approach all of the above using a do now, build toward theory of system-wide transformation, which involves taking doable steps grounded in data and research that address critical needs while building toward an inspiring, bold, financially sustainable vision. So I think this would be a good place to start to help us develop a strategy and some benchmarks and goals that we'd like to meet before we move towards hiring somebody and then not giving them a vision or a plan for what it is that we're asking them to do. Does that make sense? Ms. Bullitt?
Yeah.
Okay. So going forward, Mr. Blocker said he would send the information about what other school districts are doing, what the job descriptions, and I think some of them, like he said, had a charter that establishes the position, so we can look through those materials and see, get some ideas for what we would want in our district. And then meanwhile, I can contact ERS and see if they could come, what the price would be if we were.
This is the link from the training?
Yes. And can I send that to everybody, or?
Yes, ma'am, we just want to be careful that there's no responses, no board members can respond. You can't just send it, if you want to send
If
directly.
you send it to me, I can send it to the board.
Yeah, that way no one inadvertently responds.
Okay, I'll send it to Mr. Brodsky, and he can disseminate it to you guys.
I'll send individual emails,
Perfect.
so you don't have to worry about responding.
So we're gonna do this before we take a vote.
I don't know if this will require a vote, but I want you guys to have the information, so then we can discuss what our next steps would be. And whether that's, I don't know at what point we need to authorize the district to spend
Well,
money
I
to
can
help.
also tell you, we're not the only district right now under the current very complicated technology that is out there. I mean, there are so many people just trying to get our money. That's really the way, it was very scary actually listening to school districts present. I will tell you, we are in the forefront of our thinking right now because there's many districts looking to move forward in this direction because it's not your typical finance audit. It is looking at how to protect us, protect our money, so.
And I think that's what this would provide. And
Yeah.
what I like about them is
Yeah.
that they work with a lot of school districts.
Mhm.
So you're not hiring somebody who is only
Yeah.
working with us. You're working with an organization who does this, not just even in the state of Florida, but across the country. Which you need somebody who knows specific Florida financing because it's different, obviously, across the country. But I think this is a really good first step.
So to Ms. Clark's point, is this something that's like, can we put some kind of objective or deadline or goal here? Because if we, to move forward, at some point, we have to vote on something. And 1 month has gone by, we did not have that information prior to last week.
Right.
So at what point, the next workshop, can we come to some kind of a decision, have a presentation, make a decision?
So, like I said, Mr. Brodsky can send this link out, you guys can peruse it, and then I will reach out to them meantime and see if they could come do a presentation for us, maybe give us, I don't know if we would need an RFP, I don't know legally for us to purchase these services, what that looks like. It's different from having like a membership with FSBA or a membership with a different organization. This is a service that we're looking to get. So we would need to, how do we go about that legally? So let's jump those hurdles over this next month. And then at our next workshop meeting, hopefully we could have some direction from our legal team. And I don't know, Mr. Superintendent, if you guys need to do any of the legwork, if we need an RFP or.
So we'll look into that. When they give us a cost involved, that will then trigger what it is we need to do
Okay.
in order to make that a reality.
All right, perfect. Well, I'll work on that, reaching out to ERS, and if you guys will make phone calls or, look at what other counties are doing. If you want to reach out directly to ERS, I'm sure they'd speak to you guys as well. And so hopefully by the next workshop, we'll have maybe a cost associated to having this training or this service provided to us as a board. And at that point, we can decide what next steps are if we need to put an agenda item on the board meeting. Because if it's not something that we need to vote on, we wouldn't need to agenda it. It would just, we would give consensus and direction that that's where we want to go. Make sense?
Yeah, I think we all have to understand that we do have multiple audits, but they're looking at different things. We have to understand what they're looking at. And when I spoke to the state auditor, she was quite clear, we only look to see that we're in compliance with the Red Book. That's it. So we don't know what we're missing. I don't think there's a person in this room that really understands all the audits. So.
Ms. Bola, does that sound amenable to you?
Yes, sounds great, thank you.
Okay. All right, well, that
And
is,
that gives us a month to discuss, to look at everything, to talk to other people. My other, Mr. Blocker, could you include just the general budget numbers, like the total budget for each of those counties?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I will get those, and I will include that. I'll send an email to all the board members, or actually I'll send it individually so we avoid a potential inadvertent sunshine issue. And I'll list the county, or ask Mrs. Miles to do that as well, kind of what their budget is and what kind of the web link for their legal documents. And yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and getting the information will be very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, so I don't think we have anybody here from the public, so no questions from the audience. Mr. Superintendent, did you have?
There's a couple quick clarifications. So you would have to do a job description because it's in your policy to do that. So that's the answer to that question. So if you were going to go the other route. Also, you asked to look up information. Other districts also contract that service out, which would be St. Lucie, Marion, Volusia, Seminole, Manatee, Sarasota, Osceola, and Collier, which are all similar size to us. The advantage of contracting out is you get to specify exactly what you want them to do. They do the work, then that's it. You're not on the hook forever related to the cost.
Could we also get those counties and who they're using? So if they contract the services out, who are they using and what are they paying for it? Okay, thank you.
And just those two items.
Okay. School board attorney comments, was there anything from your department?
I wanted to update everybody on truancy. We did meet with Judge Whittington, the chief judge, last week on truancy. The meeting went very well. Superintendent was there. We are going to have a follow-up meeting in July with the judge that actually has volunteered to take over truancy court. He's very interested in that. He's going to be present. Superintendent, Mr. Blocker, the clerk's office, and also the state attorney's office, who is very involved in this as well.
Okay. What judge is it that would be?
Forbes.
Forbes,
Okay.
yep.
Right. School board member comments. Does anybody have anything to add?
I just wanted to ask, I didn't ask you during Power School, right? So we do find more efficient ways to do things, a lot. If I go through the last year and a half on the board, how many programs we've bought to be more efficient, save man hours. And I didn't talk about that during your agenda review, because I don't know how many dollars we've spent on all these programs to do things better. But what I was talking about was another one of those type programs to do things more efficient.
I totally get that and would agree that we always want to be more efficient. Who would say we wouldn't? But I would also point out that we do things to become more efficient. You mentioned 7 mindsets. That's actually a cost savings because we restructured the 2 deals. The state required instruction with 7 mindsets. It's actually a cost savings. And I'd also kind of put, we should always do that, and I'm in total favor of everything you guys have said today, regardless of this topic. But I also got to provide a little context when you're looking at, I think one of the motivations is we of course want to pay our employees, well, and so therefore resources are tight, and they always are. If you take a look at Florida being 42nd in funding, right, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out you got limited amounts of money to pay employees. And over the last 3 years, we put in additional 44 million. Yes, I didn't stutter. An additional 44 million. Let me say it again, in case you didn't hear it. An additional 44 million. That's the largest 3-year took. We are cost savings and applying that money. That's a fact. It's not Facebook, it's not Twitter. What do I say about Twitter? Truth, not Twitter?
Truth, not Twitter, yes.
I haven't come up with an I one yet. That's a fact. So you are doing some of those things. So I think you need to take a little bit of credit for the things that are going on, first of all. And of course, we always want to improve. And so I hope through this process, whatever the process is going to be, that there's improvement. But to kind of look at it as nothing's happening would be absolutely false. And I'll correct that record publicly and loudly related to that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
I would say information, not Instagram.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Accurate information, not Instagram. Thank you.
Any other school board member comments?
I've got a list, but I'll wait.
You have the floor if you
No,
want.
no, no.
Okay.
I
Ms.
think we can
Golden?
wait.
May I say something?
Absolutely.
I just want to send out a congratulations to Mrs. Clark for another 4 years, and to Mr. Bosky for another 4 years. It's after June 14th, and Happy election. Congratulations.
Thank you. You just have to put up with me for another 4, sorry.
I only have to put up with you until November, McFly.
I was waiting for that one.
Oh, I guess this is the official announcement that I'm not running. There you go.
So no sign waving for anybody this summer. Wow. All right, I have nothing further, so this meeting's adjourned.
Are we meeting with here?
Yes, we already, so, I don't know if he's back there, but he is.